Okay. Hi, folks. How are you? Happy Sunday. Rohit, do you have like a slide deck prepped up, or are you gonna talk freehand?
More, yeah, we're going to talk freehand, and actually after this call, depending on what questions we get, etc., I was going to write, a more detailed sort of
Oh,
thing
yeah.
available. We'll be able, yeah,
Yeah, I'll send you the.
I,
It's transcribing, so I'll send you the notes so that you get some more insights as
yes,
well. So
yeah, yeah,
what I'll do is the questions that I've sent you on your email, I'll just go through those questions, and if you can answer those questions, we'll take it to 12:30 and then open the door for everybody else to ask your questions so that they get that one-on-one time with you.
sure, no problem.
How do I introduce you, Rohit? I like drummed up a quick beat about you, but now
Okay,
I should probably like know more about you. I'm gonna go to your LinkedIn and just literally read off your about section. Look at me being the best host in the world.
that's okay. This is informal. Yeah,
People already know you, but I will also talk about you. Have I been? You're Rohit Srinivasa. Have I been calling you Rohit Srinivasan? Have I been
No,
doing?
no, I think it's been correct. Yeah, so far, I've not noticed.
Okay, great. Okay. I'm so happy to see that you got your bachelor's in mathematics. That is,
Yeah, it kind of switching lanes now. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, what I've realized is whatever degree you get in, like whatever degree you get, yes, of course you may have a different career, but then your mind and sense making works in that way. So I can see myself like, whenever coach people about EB1, I'll always take instances of like statistics and computer science and flow chart. So your mind works in those ways. So I'm wondering, does your mind like fetch some of those mathematical concepts when you're making sense of?
It's interesting because in the legal field, I think it's a lot about logical connection. If this happens, that happens. If there's this happening, is there an exception to this? There's a lot of that type of stuff that goes
Mm,
on. So there are some parallels,
mm,
with both. Yeah.
mm. There's this woman who wrote a cookbook, like a recipe book, after like a long career in the law. And she said that her law career really helped her write that book because everything is so measured and everything is so interconnected. So it's funny how it all connects. Everything is everything.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you can definitely get value, and sometimes pulling up things or learning about people's profiles and things like that, it's helpful. Kind of kind of having diverse skill set. But today is a good one, a good topic.
Yeah, listen, I picked up this topic very selfishly because I'm like, I need to know this so that I can translate it to people. And I could not find anybody else better suited to do this than you because you really do have. Uh, I mean, I've read your posts. People who have not read Rohit's post. Rohit, do you want to put a link in the chat so that folks
Oh
can
yeah.
understand what I'm talking about? Hi, everybody. There is 335 people signed up for this session. It's madness. I saw a message. Yash J, hello, excited to join today. I'm aiming for O1A, not EB1. Original contributions is a nightmare. For original contribution, how do the letters need to be from? Kaushik is just like coming in hot with his questions. He's like, I am here with an agenda. I'm going to get this question answered. Relax. We are going to get to your question, Kaushik. Breathe a little. All right, thanks, Rohit. I'm going to pin that in the chat. I would encourage everybody to go and read Rohit's blog. He really does write very copiously about EB1 criteria. Very, very well articulated. So I would encourage everybody, if you can spend some time, invest some time learning about EB1 before attacking it. That's always a good investment. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to pick up some couple of people to say hi. Anirudh, Anoop, Atul, Chintan, Dimple, Francis Tyson. Who's joining here for the first time? Like, this is your very first time joining in a call like this. That's awesome. Welcome, folks. I see some veterans as well. Sharad, hi.
This is my first time, so looking forward to. And
Amazing.
thank you so much for you. I mean, you and the folks, right? Like making it happen.
Yep, happy to have you, Sharad. Happy to have you. Thank you for being the brave person to turn on your camera. You're not under any obligation to do that. You do it Monday through Friday, so you can relax, chill a little, and just listen to Rohit. Before I bring Rohit, folks, I do want to take a moment to say that thank you for joining. My name is Aditi Paul. In case you uh, I haven't been able to introduce myself. Let me introduce myself first. I got my EB1 in 2022. Since then, have been obsessed with this space. There's so much that I wish I did differently when I got my EB1. And I've been on the prowl to get folks like Rohit sweet talk them into spending an hour with you and tell you things that I wish I had known when I was going through EB1 myself. And one of those criteria is original contributions of major significance. So with that, let me introduce Rohit. Rohit Srinivasa, immigration attorney extraordinaire. I didn't know about Rohit until somebody talked about him in the Slack community. Are people in the Slack community, or they're confused? What am I talking about? Okay, if you don't know, there is a Slack community that you can join at no cost, and you can meet people like Rohit in there, and also folks who are in the same hunt as you are. It is a community that is high on EB1 creatine. Join at your own peril, is what I say. Soon after this workshop, this is an open for all workshop, but as one of my initiatives to educate people more about EB1 and not just educate them to get them into action, I also host closed door workshops. The one that is after this is sold out. But if you'd like to get in on future workshops, I'm going to drop a waitlist link over here. Feel free to put your name in there when the next workshop happens, where you get more one-on-one time with folks like Rohit to give you direct feedback on your case. That's the agenda for the closed door workshops. I'm going to ask everyone to please keep their mics on mute so that we'll be able to listen to Rohit more intently. Pranki, I'm going to mute you. Okay, folks. Rohit, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. So
Awesome.
Feel free to ask. I mean, should I present, or I know that there's a few questions that you want me to start with.
I'm going to go ahead and read those questions to you folks. You are going to get the recording of this call. If you've purchased it, you're going to get it faster. If you haven't purchased it, you're going to get it after 48 hours. The first thing that I want to clarify is we are going to go for a one-on-one conversation between me and Rohit, primarily about original contributions of major significance. If you have received the email that I sent you yesterday, you already know the questions that I'm about to ask him. If you don't know, just follow along. Me and Rohit, Rohit is going to chat till 12:35 p.m. At 12:35 p.m., I'm going to give the floor to you. So if you have any questions, you're going to get that rare opportunity to ask Rohit one-on-one. I would encourage you to keep those questions to one question per person out of courtesy for others. If you take it to two, I will cut you off. So please make sure that you're keeping it to one question per person. So we're going to get into the conversation today. Rohit, the first thing that I wanted to ask you is original contributions of major significance. What the hell does that even mean? Can you give us the skinny on that?
Sure. So this is actually one of the hardest, in terms of the way the regulations define the different criteria. But I think it's one of the most important because it showcases direct impact that you've already done, not something speculative in the future. So that's really important to know when you're arguing this. It has to have been realized, the contributions, that is. I like to split it up into two parts: originality and then the contributions of major significance. I guess you could do it in three, but I like to do it in two. And then the originality part, I like to actually bifurcate that into two parts as well. One is original, meaning it's come from you, evidence that you sourced it at some level, it maybe as a part of a team or led that specific improvement in methodology or whatever service or device, etc. So we have to showcase, chain of custody to you at some level. And then the other part is the originality in terms of its novelty, an improvement, an innovation of something that's that's better than something that was already existing. And typically, if you're working for a really big company that's a leader in a certain field, for example, Meta in digital monetization, or Amazon for that matter, or Amazon in supply chain, or Walmart in that matter, and you're truly creating an impact, in terms of them actually basically updating their tool usage from what was there to what you were responsible for. I mean, that in itself can imply that this is novel at some level. Now, I think citations and patents people talk about a lot. I think patents are a little bit overused in terms of original contributions. And the reason for that is at least the originality is fulfilled over there. We have a public domain data that recognizes you in terms of the improvement on something. And a patent is basically a legal recognition of an improvement over prior art. That means basically USPTO goes and looks at all the existing things that are out there in that same field and makes a determination that this is novel. And that's what that is. But really where the contributions come in is when it's starting to be cited, licensed, and then that is aggregated over many customers or many people, etc. And that's where the contributions actually manifest of major significance. So for example, we're using Google Meet right now. If I was an EB1 team member really involved in this, no doubt I benefited Google. But of course, I would try to showcase any source code redacted. I would try to showcase anything, any internal emails where I'm delegating stuff in relationship to the development of this. I'm also looking at seeing what did Google Meet do, maybe consulting case studies or internal case reports, or maybe companies adverse to Google commenting about what are they doing that's an improvement and trying to match them. Things like that type of evidence showcases the fact that, hey, there is something novel going on, and implies that, hey, there is a contribution that's not only original, where I can show it came from you to some level, but also something novel. Maybe the streaming service improved times or improved connectivity to people, and that saved billions of dollars across industries when you look at the market share of Google Meet. Maybe they licensed this product to many, many companies at an enterprise level. And because of the improvements over another product, maybe because of increases in the quality of the video, less connectivity issues, all of a sudden you can aggregate that to quantifiable cost savings, and that can be aggregated in a graph. And I also like to look at this visually too. Let's say you're developing a product or a service or methodology, and if you think about a graph, and maybe I'll write about this as well, of course, you want to look at the linear graph in terms of a timeline where you started on the project or where you completed it, and then the improvements until now. And then there's a delta over there in that specific thing. Maybe you increased efficiency by milliseconds on a certain product, or you improve the fuel efficiency of an engine by a certain percentage. From when you started working on it, when you completed it, to now, we are seeing significant increases in the efficiency. Now aggregate that based on the market share of everybody that's using that engine or that car or that vehicle, and what does that result in from a graph in terms of quantifiable real dollar savings or efficiency and things like that. I think that's how you try to showcase that. It's really a game of playing connect the dots from you to some improvements, to then finally use letters of reference to kind of corroborate that evidence that you already provided, where they talk about very specific cost savings or that delta I talked about in terms of efficiency. And of course, external recommendations. I know these can be tough, maybe by a significant customer that may have used it and realized real savings or real efficiencies within their own workflow that can be attributed to you. And then we can aggregate the data based on the public domain of the market share and how many people are using this, etc. That's sort of the thing. It's tough. It's not easy to conceptualize this.
Okay, so if I have to summarize what you just said, when you're looking at the entire criteria, original contribution of major significance, when a lawyer looks at it, they are not just looking at it as one simplistic statement. You are breaking it down into chunks. You're even breaking down the word originality into two halves. So one part of originality is it is from you, and number two is it is novel. And what you have mentioned, how many people are tech folks over here? Let's say me in the chat. Can you say it like me in the chat? If you're working in tech, okay. If you're working in anything non-academic, okay, great. So for folks in tech, one of the words that jumped out at me when Rohit was talking about is the term improvement. Because when we hear originality, we think that I have to build something from the ground up. But what I'm hearing you say is iPhone 16 to iPhone 17, that upgrade could also be originality. Is that correct?
Yeah, those specifics in terms of any upgrade. Obviously you may not have been completely involved in the complete upgrade, but a part of something that you did maybe was critical to that, and that resulted in the upgrade, without which it couldn't happen. And yes, you can argue that.
Okay. Can you give folks? I'm going to put all your hands down because this is not the time to ask questions. We will have question asking time at the very end, so I'm going to lower all your hands. We are going to get into Q&A mode in 12:35. So when you're talking about, you may not have been a big part of it, but a small part of it, can you give an example from your prior cases without disclosing your clients where you saw this being realized and they being approved? What did that case look like?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult sometimes because USCIS does not give you feedback, on approvals. And typically with original contributions, if they, I think I've had only one case in the past where I've gotten an RFE where the original contribution was approved and some other criteria wasn't, which is very, very rare. But typically, there are a lot of times, a couple of things where, what not to do is, just completely relying on recommendation letters to, and say, hey, take their word for it. I did it. That's not very good. But a lot of times it actually dovetails on the critical role. We had a client, some time ago, large hyperscale provider, and he solved an industry problem within cloud solutions, architecture. And basically the way we tied the innovation to him was, I think there was some internal Scrum artifacts, I think Jira tickets. I think there was that company's one-pager, a 6-pager approval deck showing him as a proposed author and tech lead and a code owner, redacted, of course. I think there was a Git commit history, things like that, where, and also an internal email from a VP that was redacted, showcasing that he was involved. Remember, this is not proving something beyond a reasonable doubt. USCIS understands that a lot of this stuff is very sensitive, but it's proving more likely than not that you were obviously a source or very important part of that specific novel methodology. And basically the second thing that he did was he was able to produce a white paper on a company blog, a major company blog. He was able to, peer reviewed internally. This might not count as authorship necessarily since it's an internal peer review, but it does add value to your original contributions because it was peer reviewed internally and walked through that sort of algorithm, etc. And then of course, within that company, they also had a summit and a breakout event, etc., where he spoke about it, and he demonstrated benchmarks between what was and what is now with the thing that he was a part of, or team a part of. And of course, I think the sample workload in terms of latency, there was a significant reduction in that. And of course, that talk and that summit was done, and basically a paper led to the work led to a paper that led to a spoken event, and then beyond the employer, external accounts, customer accounts that we tried to aggregate the number basically, maybe usage logs scrubbed of customer data that showcase certain companies. If they wanted to share their logos, fine, or if not, we could use something in the public domain that showcases if companies were using certain products, maybe consulting case studies, etc. And then, of course, independent expert opinions. I know Gartner is one that does case studies, and also likes to look at new technological innovations and how that's affecting the market. Maybe citing the AWS paper, but also, if any computing foundations or any foundations within that field. If you're able to speak about that, without giving too much proprietary detail, I'd encourage people to do so. And then, of course, finally, if there are any internal memos that can be scrubbed of data, or if there's anything that can showcase the revenue that resulted for your company because of that specific innovation for that specific product, that you're responsible for. Maybe it was a part of a larger product that your role was very critical, without which that product would not be where it is and bought by customers today. And I think that it eventually showed a lot of computing time savings, customers saving a lot, and in turn increasing the revenue of the company. I will write more about this example as best as I can without divulging too much. But the point is, there was a clear connection of the dots here. And finally, the letter of recommendation was used very strategically in showcasing and corroborating metrics on things maybe that could have been redacted, or providing context on redacted emails or redacted code or whatever that might be. The point is, though, it wasn't just some praise saying, hey, he was critical to it, give him the EB1A, but it was more trying to build a chain of custody ultimately to that recommendation.
So the point over here is, when you have to contend that this is ascribed to this person, like, look, I'm going to take somebody from here, like Pritha did it. So we have to show not just from 0 to 1 being the outcome variables that are like the $1 million or the time save, but 0 to 0.1 and 0.1 to 0.2, 0.1 being some of those memos, 0.2 being some of those email letters, 0.3 being some of those lunch and learns when you were asked to present this work. So showing that trail of work that you have done so you can claim ownership of the outcome.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is so important. And actually, look, a lot of you guys are leveraging a lot of the similar organizations to write, to judge, to review, to do a lot of things, right? This is a great area where you have to really, if you can think critically, think about the evidence you can provide, think extremely logically about how we can go from that 0 to 1. This is a difference maker for you. This is where you can stand above the competition who might be, who are applying for EB1 in droves these days, from what we're seeing. And, they're not really thinking through this. So a lot of times, our firm, when we represent clients, we actually start out with original contributions if we can get a great storyline. I think we're speaking about that in the next session, right? Presenting that. But, if we can really see that, or end with it, meaning that we really feel like it's really important to present this. It's a real difference maker.
One question that you that I have as a follow-up, which you talked about, is this person who you're talking about, they were able to present a white paper and they were able to show that they judged internally. Is that evidence for originality, or is that evidence of major significance part of the claim, of the criteria?
It's part of originality. I think originality. I think it would showcase both that this person was very responsible for this product, but also novelty. Because this is a major company that that needed improvements within, let's say, cloud, right? And they published an internal white paper, which is essentially a blog internally within the company, but was peer reviewed by other leaders in the company. The implication is this company is a leader in what it does and has significant market share. So obviously, if he was doing something in a company that leads in this area, there is a huge, again, as I mentioned, it's more likely than not the standard of evidence, not beyond reasonable doubt. So it's likely that this person, has something very novel. And maybe competitors, as I mentioned, if they speak about it or they're going for the same thing or they're doing something, that also shows the fact that a company, doesn't like to say adverse things about themselves or do adverse things about themselves showcased to the public. However, they're chasing somebody. That's a great piece of evidence show that there is some originality here. And again, that can be from news articles, consulting case studies, etc. But you're right. He not only did the work, he published the blog, but, and then of course there was this, big companies have sometimes summits where he can speak. A lot of little things that led to it.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is, when you have a patent or when you have a paper, the arbiter of originality is the journal or USPTO. But in this case, the arbiter is the company who is like, look, this company is credible. It's put out this blog. It's internally vetted that this is an original idea, and this becomes an evidence of that originality. Is that what it is?
Like that, along with showcasing, hey, where's the market share of this company? Obviously, if you're an entrepreneur working in a startup and have disrupted the industry, we would want to see maybe case studies on the outside, or maybe evidence of funding because of something like this or something in the media. But in a large company that tends to be one of the leaders in a field like this, maybe increases in market share that showcase that all of these evidence imply that originality and novelty,
Correct.
So that it's the implication, that's, and maybe of course, showing certain metrics and increased savings of time, computing time, etc., or what was before to what is now. Maybe if you're working in a big automotive company that's eating up market share because of its innovative fuel efficiency, because somebody worked on it, those imply that there's something here, there's something original here, and that you were very critical. Yeah.
Right. There's a clear before and after.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I had was off major significance. Some of the AO cases that I have read kind of pushes back on the strategy you just mentioned, that if you are working for a company like Google and you have created Google Meet, which clearly is being used by billions of people, they are your clients, but then USCIS comes back and says, well, we have to see it, has it altered the field beyond your clients and customers, even though the clients and customers is a giant database. So how do you push back on that?
Yeah, we have to push back, and that's true. This does happen. And I don't agree all the time with USCIS in terms of very generic statements, like that. We do push back using some case law as well over here, and showcasing other AAO decisions where they have looked into this and overturned, potentially in terms of showcasing the broad impact. I think a great example is like Google Meet or Facebook Messenger, right? If you're really critically involved in this, sure, you benefited Facebook, but what is a customer? I mean, a customer is billions of users. If you call that just the average customer, I think there's a serious issue, and we do push back on things like that. And of course, in terms of significance, what was before Google Meets? What were they doing? Maybe we need maybe we have used independent experts, for this. It was very difficult to organize calls. What we had, previously was not as good for our companies as Google Meet, and then you try to aggregate that as much as possible. For example, speaking to attorneys can be expensive, and if you have all kinds of lag problems, that can be, that time issue can be pretty costly. And you extrapolate and aggregate that over, if you're selling your product to law firms entirely, that could be billions of dollars of potentially lost revenue, or because of the time wasted. And so I think we really do have to showcase and be very specific about that. But yes, I don't agree, if they especially make statements like that all the time, and sometimes they do, unfortunately.
So your strategy is citing other cases and also pushing back on like what the average customer is and the impact it would have if this was not there.
Yeah, you try and show, that's the thing. What was before, essentially? Where is the delta? And was that increased lags? More money spent, maybe, especially now computing energy is extremely important. So has there been any efficiency in terms of powering these computing machines because of the work that you did? But of course, it has to be realized, right? So not future benefits that can be used in your personal statement and final merits, but what actually was realized. And sometimes it's digging deep into consulting studies, technical consulting studies by McKinsey, Big Four, etc., who might be talking directly about a product where you had an impact in, and using that. It's really trying to tie in a story. And that's what makes it challenging, but also great, because you differentiate yourself. Right now, all of your peers might have very similar organizations you're leveraging in other criteria, but this is an area where you will probably be different.
Right. Yeah, this is the one criteria where you really outshine others. One of the questions that I had, which is kind of coming up in the chat, how many people have changed jobs here? Can you say me in the chat? How many folks have changed jobs? All right. Lots of folks have changed jobs. Now, it could be that the good old days are behind them. And all the people who are putting me, if you have priority dates before you understood what EB1 is, chances are you did not take a copy of those internal memos, those 0 to 1.5, like, 0 to 0.1, etc. So in those cases, how do they prove it beyond reasonable doubt?
Yeah, we have to do our best, right? It's not the ideal thing, but it's understandable. Sometimes, you just can't get a hold of those internal memos or those emails. Of course, if there's anything in the public domain or anything where you maybe have gotten an internal award and that was on a website, anything that translated into the outside, you can always use. But yeah, those specific sensitive internal details, if you cannot use, in that case, that recommendation letter from there will be very important. Maybe, of course, it's going to be extremely important as high up person as you can to specifically talk about the metrics and your involvement in that. And then independently doing the research and looking for case studies that may be in the public domain about the impact for that exact piece of or methodology or service or algorithm or whatever you did that translated into the outside. Gartner, McKinsey, a lot of companies, they are other technical consulting type of companies that do case studies on improvements within a specific space of technology. Of course, there may be media involved in the tech section. Now we have people working on the Meta Ray-Ban, glasses, and there are things already that are looking that people are looking in to see how this is an improvement over taking out your phone and taking pictures versus just using this, things like that, where we would want to really try to connect you as best as you can. But in that case, we would try to leverage anything in the public domain and then reference letters, as best as we can. But yeah, internal memos yeah, people do change jobs. That happens a lot. I know that some people were able to get certain things with the permission of their previous employers. But if you cannot, at least a robust recommendation letter will be very important, and tying in as much through the things in the public domain.
Okay. So, but one has to accept the fact that in terms of 1 to 10, 10 being compelling evidence to 1 being not as compelling, if you don't have those internal memos and you're only leveraging letters, there is a certain sense of dilution that happens when it comes to compelling evidence. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think, letters of recommendation, and I've written an article, within my blog speaking about letters of recommendation in general. There's a concept called hearsay in the federal rules of evidence, where somebody bringing an out-of-court statement to prove a certain matter is considered hearsay, meaning it's not admissible in court. Because, you cannot cross-examine them to verify the authenticity of this. USCIS cannot go, and they should contact them if they want, but realistically, how can that happen? I think it's very rare that they do that. And so they want to see independent evidence, which are called hearsay exceptions. Things like business records, those internal memos or emails, public records, that are available in the public domain. Things competitors are saying that are adverse to them. They're trying to say, oh my gosh, Walmart saying, hey, oh my gosh, Amazon made this supply chain improvement. We got to go and do this. And they're putting their resources towards that. That's going to be very positive evidence as a contribution. And things like that. I wrote more about that, but simply, relying on letters of recommendation to be standalone evidence can get you pushback from USCIS for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question from me, and then we're going to give it up to people. How many of you are here who do not work on the coding side, even though you work in tech? So you're more on the strategy side, like product management, program management. Can you put me in the chat? Okay, great. Okay, so these are for folks who work in strategy, who work in the non-tangibles. We can say that we cannot produce code. How do they contend originality, even though they can show the of major significance part, product being used, etc. But how do they show their stake in the originality and novelty of that product?
Sure, at least consulting practice leaders or people in strategy, my assumption is that they have redactable PowerPoint, maybe presentations or invites to present on a certain topic, and then redact that as best as they can. Maybe screenshots of certain things that we're doing or speaking about. Again, internal emails that can at least lead a fact finder to believe that, hey, they were involved because of their involvement in this project in terms of strategy, that they're ultimately very critical to the release of this product or service or savings. We'll have to use some of those things. As I mentioned, a screenshot of a Slack shout out or an internal email that's redacted. Any of these things can be used still, and of course, supplemented by a robust letter of recommendation that's strategically used. Of course, we try to draft on our client's behalf because we like I think a lot of recommenders are, they write it very generally. These have to be very, very specific. That will actually be very helpful to an officer saying, oh, wow, okay, they have some of this. They really worked hard in trying to get us hard evidence. And then they used a letter of recommendation that was really specific to what was happening and maybe connected it to something on the outside as well. Anything in the public domain can be very useful. But you have to connect the dots. That issue in the public domain, or that highlight in the public domain, or that change for the positive that happened in the public domain was a result at some level because of the critical work that you did. It's kind of connecting the dots. Yeah.
Okay. So Gartner, McKinsey reports, any commentary from your competitors which indicates that they're trying to play catch up, or they're trying to diss on you, saying that, oh, they did this, we are doing it better, like clearly showing that there is conversation in the field about your product. They're all good evidences.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Those pieces of evidence are far stronger than just a letter, right? I think because letters are looked at, they could have bias. Essentially, you're asking somebody at some level to write you something, and that can indicate bias. But if it's used to provide context, that's more useful to independent evidence. Yeah.
Got it. Finally, I know Aishwarya and everybody, they're raising their hands. People are itching to talk to you. 1 more minute and we'll get into it. What's the weirdest type of original contribution that you have seen got approved by USCIS? I'll tell you one example. Somebody I talked to who's also an EB1 recipient, they were able to argue that they started a coding club back in Nigeria during their Bachelors of Science days as evidence of original contribution. So I'm wondering, what kind of weird types of original contributions have you seen being approved by USCIS?
It's really interesting. Unfortunately, USCIS doesn't give us feedback on approved petitions. I wish they did. Hey, you satisfied original contributions. So it's very rare that I actually know what exactly. Maybe we didn't satisfy it and we satisfied the other criteria. It's very likely possible that happened. But I think the very rare occasion that I had, it was actually this individual who had done a lot of the work, no patents, no publications. But again, using those JIRA or internals, some Scrum data, internal screenshots of certain things, that white paper he wrote for his company blog, which was apparently peer reviewed as well, that was showcased through letters. Those, I think that was probably one of the ones where actually he got his original contribution approved and got an RFE on something else, which was ultimately the case got approved. But that's a very rare situation I've seen that happen. But I think ultimately what makes this original contributions, I think, a great criteria as well as challenging, is the fact that you're right. You can distinguish yourself, but make sure that you do fall in line with the proposed expertise that you're arguing for EB1A. Make sure that that you don't forget about. So things outside, of course, as long as it's within the framework of your expertise, it's fine. So for example, if you're developing a great things that helped, I think a lot of companies have sort of a public benefit sort of services. So we've had people, the work in the cloud or predictive analytics has helped, underserved regions in terms of healthcare, has had an impact. They have a specific fund in terms of corporate responsibility that goes to the veterans, and they've helped, veterans communicate better with their family when they're on duty abroad, etc., where companies are really involved in things like this. And so if people are involved in certain things that benefited that's a great original contribution.
Okay. This is great. I mean, I learned so much. Folks, this is time for you to ask questions. I would encourage everybody to raise their hands. Whether we get to you or not is a question for another day, but keep raising your hands. You will get one question per person. Please make sure you're not asking questions that are hyper specific to your profile, because then that gets into attorney-client consultation, and this is not that. So keep it to one question per person. Keep it generic enough so Rohit can comment on that. Vamsi, we'll start with you.
Thanks, guys. So Rohit, what value, if any, would you assign to open source contributions? Like, for example, if I have my own projects which are like widely starred, widely used, can I claim those as sort of personal contributions? Or if I'm contributing to some other popular projects that, again, I can, like, all of them are in the public domain, I can easily prove how widely used they are, and etc.
Yeah, actually, these can definitely be used. Of course, we may have to showcase scale, but and maybe how people may have leveraged this and what that resulted in, maybe a chain of contributions, maybe. But yeah, no, that can definitely be used, thoughtfully, in terms of the contributions. And maybe if somebody has used it and they've used it at scale, they could maybe write a letter also showcasing maybe how they leveraged it. So yeah, there could be definitely an angle here.
Good, thank you.
Where this list is too long. It's not letting me go to the people who raised their hands. What the heck? Okay, give me 1 second, folks. Trying. Himanshu.
Hey, thanks, Dr. Aditi and Rohit here. One quick question. So if there is a rejection on my EB1 from UCIS, does it jeopardize my EB2, which is already, I have a priority date?
No, I've not seen anything, like that, but, be careful though, if the EB1 was rejected due to things like misrepresentation. I have not faced this issue, but I know some colleagues have, had that certain piece of evidence, then that could have an impact potentially. But other than that though, no. If it's denied on the merits, that's fine.
Thank you.
Lakshit.
Thanks, Rohit. Thanks, Aditi. So, quick question. So there is some public evidence about like the impact of the work that you are doing. It's a quantifiable number that's there, but that doesn't represent the piece of the work that you are doing, right? So how do you attribute that? Okay, a piece of that work, it's not publicly available information that this is the amount of attribution, this is a percentage of, that number, the whatever the revenue is, comes from your work. So how do you quantify that? And also, do the patents that are published but not granted, do they also count, and how do they count, basically?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, let's answer the second question. I think with patents that are, let's say, not that have been filed on behalf of your company and not published, it could be valuable from the standpoint of the critical role. I think a company to put that much trust in you to maybe, potentially protect a piece of property of theirs. But a lot of companies, they try to, I think, file patents also defensively. I think to limit anybody using it, sort of a safeguard, and just sit on it, essentially. So, to prove contributions beyond that, unless they've licensed the patent or licensed the actual, after filing, licensing it at some level, we're going to have very difficult time arguing that for original contributions. It's possible if once they filed it, they put that thing into market. But again, this is not about future benefits, original, in fact, people argue this, and there are fees about this, saying these benefits have to have already been realized. So I would say, I don't know how much value that would add, maybe for critical role. And what was the first one was about? What was the something is in the public domain, but you had, I guess, developed a critical part maybe of that service or project, but you cannot exactly quantify it to you. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Right. I think that's a legal argument. So you could make a great, a car, needs to have, of course, a great engine. Some would say that may be the most important, but you might have revolutionized the tires of that car for an F1 car that makes it go that much faster. And so if you didn't do that, that car would not be what it is today. And that's a beautiful car, and it's winning everything and it's doing that. I think that if USS shouldn't look at it that way. I think every piece of the puzzle is absolutely mandatory. If this is not there, nothing is there. If what you did is not there, that would not exist. That's the type of logic that we would try to play in terms of showcasing your value. If you did not do what you did, that product would not be what it is today. You have to showcase that.
Got it. It's kind of like the domino effect that if this thing fails, even though it's a small, entire thing will go. Okay, perfect.
Causation, correct? Yeah.
Yash, go for it.
Yeah. Hello, Rohit. Hello, Aditi. So I was a software engineer at Amazon and I'm applying for an O1A. I was directly involved in the development, maintenance, and improvement of Alexa's privacy dashboard, which is the only way Alexa users can manage their history and privacy settings. In fact, I was solely responsible for said product's accessibility, so making it usable for those with vision impairments, for example, and managed to make it about 75% more accessible by enhancing existing code. And that led to significant improvement in customer satisfaction globally. I was going to use it to satisfy the critical role criterion, but curious to know if this can be used to satisfy the original contribution criterion as well. Essentially, two birds, one stone. Probably the only evidence that I can furnish is a letter from my manager. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's possible. You could definitely, I think, argue that. And obviously, if those reviews and if there is any evidence of that and any evidence that you can leverage from the public domain regarding that, that would be great. Of course, if you can leverage any evidence that you're responsible for a critical aspect of that, that's great. If it's hard evidence that could be supplemented with the letter of recommendation from the manager, that would be great, as long as it's specifically written. Again, it's a connecting the dots. If it's only a recommendation letter, they may give it to you if it's specific enough thing. Okay, well, there's no way this manager would say certain specific things about this person's involvement, and then here's all the benefits in the public domain. But if you can provide any independent evidence, if you could, again, so I think Amazon, for example, has an opportunity for you to publish in blogs about certain specific things and white papers and things like that. That could be something to look into to kind of bolster that as well, at least internally, to showcase some level of originality and you're responsible for, along with the manager letter and the stuff in the public domain. Speaking maybe about, I was talking about quantifiable impact. It'd be nice to showcase USIS loves graphs and numbers, but I think you can show qualitative impact in terms of how it improved people's lives, maybe certain stories, and then sort of aggregate that, say a lot of people like this have benefited. That could also be something to look into. I think it's a compelling story, for sure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Folks, try to keep your questions shorter so we can get to more people. Rajesh?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Rohit and Aditi, for organizing this call. So my question is more towards the critical role. So most of the projects, I don't want to be like personal question, but what I want to ask from a architecture perspective. So most of the architects, like whatever they do, it's mostly for internal clients, right? So in those cases, if we have worked for multiple employers and if we don't have like proper documentation, except the reference letter, so will it actually make your case strong, or how is the attorney is gonna structure it? Because I don't have any documentation from my previous employers. I can only get letters from my SVPs. So is it gonna really make someone's case stronger? Because if critical role is the only anchor criteria for industry folks, right?
Yeah, they're definitely an anchor. And by the way, folks, it's a great lesson here. If you're working right now in a company and you're thinking about the EB1, think about, really do an inventory of what great projects you'll lead and what you've done so that you can collect some of this stuff. Really important. You're right. You'll have to try to leverage the highest person probably that you worked under for that company, because the higher they are, the more credibility they might lend for that reference letter. So you might want to really look at as high as you can go in order to corroborate the work that you have done in very specific detail and what that led to. So that would be pretty important. Maybe having one or two of those, because otherwise, if you cannot get internal stuff, of course, their letters are really the only thing that tells people, okay, this person actually there. Maybe, of course, employment contracts. Maybe that anything that's available that you've gotten prior to working there in terms of defining what you worked on, JDs of the job, right? Job descriptions of the job, anything that you can get that identifies at least at some level where at least the angle you were in, along with that highest recommendation letter you can get. I think that would probably be a way I would look at this, for people who have already left their companies.
Okay. So one of the recovery strategies is if you do not have corroborating evidence, then go up the chain of command so that the credibility of the recommender kind of courses you through.
As high as you can, yeah, as possible. Possibly on letterhead as well. I know that's tough sometimes.
Raghavendra.
So, hi, you people are doing about your posts and everything. So, I have 30 reviews in Q1 and Q2 journals and published more than 10 ICP papers.
You might want to include your question in the chat for Raghavendra, because your voice is echoing. Is it just me, or are you able to discern?
Just a second. So, is it fine now?
Yeah, but perfect. Yeah, go for it.
Yes. So I have 30 reviews in Q1, Q2 journals and published more than 10 IEEE papers, and currently focusing on publishing my top journals. And I have hold several UK design and utility patents and few media platforms also. And I have 2.5 years of experience in 3 contract jobs, not in full time. So what are my chances of approval? Where should I focus more on?
Raghavendra, that's not the question for this forum. That gets into attorney-client consultation. So unless you have another question to ask that is related to original contributions, we may have to skip that.
Okay.
All right, cool. Book a time with Rohit and go through your case with him.
So actually,
yes.
so where should I focus more on about these?
Rohit, did you want to take that question?
Yeah, definitely. I think this might be better for I think a more detailed call. You can actually go on my website. They offer complimentary consultations because I don't. If you're an industry professional, definitely likely your publications won't have created that much traction. Maybe so your critical role will be really important, as well as of course your high salary is also quite important these days for industry folks. Because that nobody just pays you for nothing, right? And that's also again, a high salary is actually a great thing to showcase original contributions in terms of the contributions part. Because hey, if a company's paying you really well, way above market standards, you're probably making them a lot, and there's an implication there. So, but I would actually like to have I think a consult would be better for something like that. This question.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
All right, Piali, go for it.
Hi, Aditi and Rohit. Thank you so much for organizing this. So I have been part of the advanced technology team and have been part of multiple demos, development to presentation to internal management, but these are all internal to the company. So my question is related to this original contributions, how to showcase work that are proprietary to the company and are not allowed to be exposed externally. Also, the applications involve a lot of licensed third-party versions, and that restricts any external exposure. So how to deal with those kind of contributions?
Yeah, I think this is what differentiates people. I think you have to, and maybe I think showcases to USCIS that you're not being lazy and just using a recommendation letter. You'll have to really think about what can be used. Can I redact things out of those sensitive documents, or are there less sensitive ones where I can still redact things? Or any screenshots, any other involvement? Is there something where the stuff that I did internally, I was able to maybe write a white paper or do something maybe in more general terms, or present externally within an industry type of setting or conference or things like that. That's the great thing about original contribute and the challenge. I think if you try to look at it as a low-hanging fruit, hey, this person, even a higher up, if they just say things, the USCIS could question credibility, or the bias, basically. Yeah, of course, this person is going to write great things about you. Work for them, So this is what you have to brainstorm. Any shout outs, internal emails praising you. For a certain something, internal awards for a specific thing, any commendations you've received internally for that could be tied to a specific project that you worked on. Anything we could use. And of course, attorneys, we tend to evaluate each piece that we get, but those will always be looked at a little bit more favorably than simply somebody just using a reference. Always, these days especially. And so I would brainstorm what you can provide, really work on that, and that this would be the differentiating factor for a lot of people.
The corollary of that is you can have all these independent, I don't know if, I've gotten this question, so I want to ask it on behalf of folks, that you may have all those independent proofs of originality, but the person who is gonna write that letter may not want to ascribe all of that to you. So how do you bridge that gap where the recommender is not willing to ascribe the originality to you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an issue because I think ascribing originality to someone is it's also tough sometimes for a company, especially when a recommender also thinks that they're speaking on behalf of a company, which sometimes that's what leads to people not having letterheads within the organization. I would say if that's a situation like that, that's something that you've done that's really tangible, that it has had impact on the outside, but they're not ascribing it to you. I would try to see if there are opportunities for you to write in terms of generality, about what you did. Of course, leaving out the proprietary stuff, because ultimately it's about showcasing that your contributions ultimately influence the field of expertise that you're arguing for the EB1A. So I would try to see if you can leverage writing opportunities, speaking opportunities at that specific industry conference or things like that within your field of expertise, and maybe speaking in general terms, and trying to, if that's truly original, and if you speak and you write and things that somebody might bite, and you might even be interviewed for that, and you can use all of those channels, and then maybe case studies on the outside showcasing, wow, this person has such great knowledge, working over here in this company that led to all of this. On the outside, more likely than not, right? It's not, again, beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what you have to try and again, brainstorming for this one as well.
Apurv.
Yeah, actually, my question was very similar to that, which was already discussing. So based on Rohit's responses, thanks Rohit for that response. My question, maybe I'll just build up on that, would be is, I work for an employer which is big in the industry. I work for Microsoft. So stuff like that, when you talk about internal contributions, it is really hard to articulate because it's treated very confidential. And companies like those, Mang type of companies, will not allow you to write things about in the public. So like as Rohit is recommending. However, the aspect is, if internal employees are able to, talk about that as a recommendation, is this something you still use or not?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I know there are different companies with different wavelengths. I know that things in Apple are very also of course very secretive as well. Some others a little bit less so. They do allow things to go into the public domain. But basically, what you're asking is what are letters of recommendation and what people are discussing internally, can they be used? As I mentioned, screenshots of as simple as emails or even Slack messages or anything, even redacted things. You can redact a bunch of it, all of it, as long as you have the time and date stamp that showcases the fact that, hey, this was a while back, before I even contemplated the EB1A, meaning that the evidence for these contributions came well before I was preparing for the EB1A, meaning it was a part of my work, an ordinary business record. Those are always going to be valuable, even with heavy redaction. The recommendation letters can come in and actually provide context in more general terms without disclosing anything proprietary into the impact that you had. But if you're just going to have, hey, I did all this stuff on the outside, all this stuff that I'm doing, was because of me, or I had a critical role in that, and this person wrote generally about it, USCIS may have more questions than answers, about that. To ascribe that to you, or they would say something like, look, if it was truly a contribution of major significance that you were involved in, your name would be out there. Even worse, So you want to try and see what you can get as much as possible. We've had people redact a lot of their information as well. And I think it showcases to USCIS that they were not being lazy, they were thinking critically, and they were trying to do their best to get as much evidence than just having a few people write some nice stuff about them.
Makes sense. Thank you for that.
All right, folks, it's 1 o'clock. We are going to take it to 1:15. I do want to give Rohit a breather before the next workshop, which is sold out. But if you want in for the one after this, go ahead and sign up for the wait list. But all of this is to say that we will take questions up until 1:15. Is that cool, Rohit?
Sure, sure.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Krupal, go for it. Krupal. Oh, you snooze, you lose. Anusha, go for it.
Hey, hi. Hi, Aditi, and hi, Rohit. Thank you for taking this session. This is very valuable. So my question around critical role would be is like we usually contribute to high impactful projects as part of critical role. So how would we showcase them as original contribution as well? Like how can I showcase them as original contribution?
Yeah, and you should, by the way. I talk to Aditi about this all the time. I believe in cross-pollination. That means your critical role should really lead to, of course, salary, and of course, original contributions, because something that you've done on the inside should have effects on the outside. But it's really what we're talking about. What you do on the day-to-day, you'll have to really peel back. Are there any impactful projects that you have? Really think about, your email chains from those days. Any project documentation that you can redact, any internal presentations that you gave, any internal meetings. You don't have to showcase meeting minutes and things like that. They're proprietary, but you can redact everything. Anything that showcased the fact that, hey, you were involved at some level, maybe at the title of the project. And then that of course, if it has made an impact on the outside, if you're working for a big impactful project, at some level, there has to be some documentation on the outside in the public domain on the impact of that. I would say, the same answers, in terms of trying to leverage business records, any public records, things of that nature, to help you. And if possible, as I mentioned, when you're writing for authorship and reviewing and presenting, etc., write about those things that you had impact within, maybe in a little bit more general terms without disclosing any proprietary data. Really hone into the fact that you're a subject matter expert in that.
Yeah, that is great. But yeah, when we are in fintech space, it is always revolving around compliance. When we are trying to collect some kind of evidence or present ourselves that we did something outside the domain, and even we can't represent our corporation even in the papers, I don't know.
You don't have to.
Yeah,
you're representing yourself for the EB1A, so you should represent your expertise.
Exactly. Yeah, it's always compliance
Yeah.
raises a flag saying that you can't keep a corporation name even in the papers, So
Yeah, you should write about what you know, and showcase yourself as an authority. You're right. There is an issue with this for a lot of folks.
And one
but
more quick follow-up question with this. I don't want to hang people after me. Usually when any person working in the contract-based projects, so they usually go with an employer. So does the letter supporting from an employer matters to support this documentation, or should it always come from the original client, even though I worked as a contractor to them? Should the letter coming from them would matter most, or should the letter coming from the employer would matter the most?
I think both letters can have a very specific purpose depending on the benefits you provided each one. So if some of the original contributions can be better defined by the impact that you made to the client as a contractor, then maybe from them as high up as you can could be very useful and probative to USCIS in terms of evaluating the evidence, whether there was a major significance. And then maybe one you could get like that. And if there are multiple clients across multiple industries having big time market share in whatever they're doing, you can aggregate the impact, with a little bit of math, statistics, etc., and creating a graph saying, hey, what was the overall impact? Again, as I mentioned, more likely than not. That's the standard of evidence, not beyond reasonable doubt. Ultimately, they have to be able to tie as much as possible to the fact that you are responsible for creating something that went beyond with a certain metric. And given all of these things, the evidence here, can I make that, or can I make that assumption here? And if the answer is yes, you'll satisfy it. That's the thing.
Thank you. Thank you
As
so
much as we can, yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Let's see who is back. Debjyoti Mukherjee, go for it.
Hey, thanks, Aditi. Hi, Rohit. My question is about the membership. Like, I know there is a multiple memberships depending on the domain. So my domain is cloud computing and information security. Would you recommend what kind of membership I should look for?
I think this definitely you should. I think the membership is frankly one of the hardest things to satisfy. I think there might be a few in the cloud. I know that this IEEE seems to be a catch-all, but more than membership, if you join one as senior as you can get in terms of that, I always encourage people to be involved in the organization, to showcase the fact that, hey, you just simply didn't join a membership, which likely will not meet for USCIS purposes, but maybe start a subcommittee within your specific field of expertise and lead a review committee or present over there. That's far better than simply joining a membership that likely USCIS may not consider satisfying that criterion. Unfortunately, these days, you have a list of people who have fellows of all kinds of organizations. I think USCIS sees them, if I see them 5-6 times a day, I can only imagine what an adjudicator sees. But if they see somebody being involved in that membership organization and educating and doing other things, not only can it account for maybe a critical role within that organization, but also possibly original contributions and the leveraging that in the final merits especially. But I would say we have some resources, I think, that actually helps find some things for thought leadership. I think I will share with Aditi after the call. Yeah.
Thanks, Rohit. Thanks, Aditi.
I have shared a wonderful article that Rohit has written. I wish I had a better adjective than wonderful. Maybe well thought out, very, very thorough. Please read that.
Yeah.
And what you are getting from this conversation, I hope, is one layer deeper than the chatter on the streets. That it is impossible. If you are trying to build EB1 the right way, we have to accept two things. Number one is it requires deep intentionality, that we cannot just do things and think this is done. Whether that be peeling back the layers of the work that you're doing from your 9 to 5, or being really intentional about, hey, I have done this work, how can I leverage that? And number two is not coasting on titles, right? You got a Forbes Tech, great, looks great on paper. You got into IEEE Senior, great, but what can you do with it? What can you leverage out of it? And the third and the most important thing is time. All of this effort, Rohit, I hope you agree with me on this, that EB1 just takes time. So please build it from a place where you can give it time, and not fall into this desperation track that we fall into because things are not germinating as fast as we want it to.
I totally agree. Thanks, Aditi.
Yeah. Raghav.
Hi, my question, like, what is the right time to involve attorney? Because when I approached a couple of attorneys, they says you are not ready yet. And as an attorney, Rohit, what is your take?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on each person. But if I see an industry person coming to me, at minimum, I want to see at least 2 fairly strong criteria that's already there, without necessarily them having built their profile. And that typically tends to be the critical role or roles over the years, and likely substantive salary. Those 2 things. But of course, that's not the immediate time that we would take a client. We would probably provide a resource so that they could at least satisfy a couple of others at the very bare minimum, and then involve. This is a really subjective question, though. And actually, Aditi, I'll send a resource where I'm working with someone, because I see this delta where people talk to me and where people should hire me. And there's a gap different people have, and that's a pain point, frankly, as for me as an attorney, I'm sure for clients as well, because I don't want to have a client for 2 years or a year even, right? That doesn't make sense for either one of us. But at the same time, we want to make sure we don't submit a very deficient case as well, because actually, remember, some people are willing to take the risk. Hey, I just want to give it a shot. But as an attorney, I want to submit decent cases to USCIS because I have a reputation to maintain with them. I don't want them to think, wow, what kind of case is this guy submitting, as an attorney. That's another thing, maybe a self-interest. Yeah.
Interesting. Neeraj.
Thanks, Aditi. Hi, Rohit. So you mentioned
Hi.
about customer feedback letters or customer testimonials. I work as a data scientist at Amex, and lot of the customer feedbacks are very generic and towards the company. So my first question is, do we mandatorily have to submit customer testimonial letters for a strong petition? And second is, how do we tie that customer testimony to my specific work? How do we, search for the granular feedback from the customers which tie to my work? Yeah.
Right. I think that's a great question. So, for example, we had a situation where, we had a guy working for a major retail store, and he established a really critical thing for a part of that for paperless payments or no-touch payments, machines all over the place. And it really helped a lot of the independent franchisors of this retail store that's all over the country. And he had been a big part of that, developing at least a part of that. And of course, a lot of those testimonials where it said, hey, we love this thing. This is a great innovation. And then at that point of time, we had to peel back and look at maybe a very specific letter of recommendation, which actually really explained exactly how this person was involved in that, in the development of that, in terms of his unique, his unique service in terms of that application. And then, of course, it came again down to any internal things that he might have had, where maybe internal presentations, internal praise, emails, any other commendations, anything that he might have led, even people praising you, by the way, via email, your managers or co-workers on the project, etc. Established people showcasing, praise. Those things can be used as evidence of both critical role and, of course, original contributions, provided that specific project had an impact on the outside. But ultimately, this was all over the nation. It saved these people from handling a lot of cash, potentially being, a target of robberies late at night. I mean, it helped a lot. And all of this stuff was in the data, on the news and stuff like that on the outside. So, I think you can be creative with this, customer testimonials, coming back to letters, coming back to something internal, connecting those dots. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Aishwarya.
Hi, Aditi. Thank you for organizing this meeting. So my question is, like, you've been talking about the company supporting the original contribution, right? So what if there is no probably connection between what you do at the work and what you publish? Maybe the company is a small company and maybe there is no scope of innovation or something like that. So how do you leverage that? Like, can older IEEE paper can be a source of original contribution in that case?
Well, you have to be very careful here. People love to use all kinds of evidence for EB1A from the time they were in school. And while things might have been very impressive, you're ultimately arguing on why you're the top percentile in a certain field of expertise. So anything tangential or unrelated to that exact expertise is going to be seen as confusing to the officer, and you're going to get dinged on. Yeah, I've seen this situation happen. People satisfy 5 criteria, all different areas. And then the officer says a notice of intent to deny, lack of sustained a claim, because I don't even know what your expertise is based on what you're writing. So you got to be very careful in certain situations like this. Everything has to flow as a story. Everything has to flow as a crescendo to why you're at the top right now. And if things don't relate, things are really old and don't add value, you should be very careful of whether you want to use them or not.
Yeah, I dropped the link of somebody who made their petition publicly available. This guy satisfied exactly verbatim what Rohit is saying, that he satisfied 5 criteria. USCIS sent him notice of intent to deny, essentially on the same ground that you have not shown sustenance. So as cruel as USCIS's judgment was on the case, his response was equally, if not more brilliant. So if you want to read that, go ahead, go for it. Bhavesh, you're going to be the last person. We're going to take the question off. For rest, please reach out to Rohit, as he said that he does provide consultation. So he's happy to take you there. So Bhavesh, go for it.
Hey, thank you so much for the time. My question is for a non-tech role, specifically in finance. People generally move from, I think there was a question earlier as well, of changing roles. So let's say you change role from a non-investment to an investment role, and you had original or contributions in both of them. How should one think about framing this so that it doesn't appear as if you are vying for I don't know, multiple areas of expertise? And in both the areas, sorry, in both these areas,
I think that. Yeah, I think I was seeing where you're going with this, because in the interest of time, I think I wanted to get to this, and this is a common question that I get with a lot of people. They've had career changes or switches or doing different things tangentially, etc. Look, USCIS prefers a master of something one that's very specific rather than a well-rounded person or interdisciplinary skills. That might be good for finding employment, but not necessarily for EB1A. I think what's very important is to take inventory of your career completely professionally and find a common thread or a theme and major impactful projects within that theme as much as possible, and then define your expertise, maybe a sentence. That's going to be extremely important. There may be certain things that you've done within the non-investment and the investment role where you had certain skill set or certain expertise that was useful for both. And you really have to think about that and what that is. And then when you make that argument for original contributions, you have to think about ensuring that you don't stray away from that expertise you're arguing for EB1A. And this is what I tell a lot of folks on my calls as well. It's really, about getting that thread, a common thread, because that's the foundation of your case, your expertise, defined in that first line of the EB1A petition.
Wonderful. Folk, we can stay here for eternity, and trust me, the questions are going to be infinite, more infinite than my bottomless TikTok feed, which is not a good thing. So we're going to draw this to a close. Sunny, Tarun, Srinivas, Garen, whoever has raised their hands, please feel free to reach out to Rohit as well. We are going to give Rohit 10 minutes of a breather. Folks who are on the call, Kshitij, Anusha, Sanat, Gosia, Pritha, Sundar, Gajendra, Redaya, and Sonali, I hope you're ready with your pitches. We're going to get into that call in 10 minutes. But for the rest of us who are here on the call, Rohit, any final words of advice as people are leaving this call ready to take on EB1 by its horns?
Yeah, no, keep working. You're doing a lot of great things. Whenever you're thinking about developing any piece of evidence, make sure it relates to your expertise. Make sure that it has an impact over there. Stay away from places. Be a leader as much as possible than a follower. And stay away from places that are, if it's too good to be true, it is kind of deal. Be careful about those. And original contributions it can make the difference if well presented for your case. As you can see, can be one of the toughest ones, but it's one that we like to always argue. And I'll be writing about this now that I have a lot of these questions. I'm going to think about it and write something. Hopefully that'll come out soon.
Yeah, I'm going to send you the transcript. We are going to hold you accountable, Rohit. We are looking forward 30 pages of original contribution insights from you. No pressure. But thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope you know that you're doing the difficult part. There were 335 people who signed up, but 167 showed up. So if somebody is convincing you that EB1 is a lost game, there's so much competition, understand the only way you're going to lose is if you give up. There are a lot of entrepreneurs and there are a lot of wantrepreneurs. You're not a wantrepreneur, you're getting this done. So please give yourself a round of applause for sticking to the plan and coming here, investing 1 hour of your life, educating yourself. You are separating yourself from the crowd in my eyes. So congratulations to that, and have a good Sunday. And Rohit, I'll see you in 10 minutes.
Sure. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.